Where did Mom go? Who's going to pay for this meal?" Tiana's scream tore through the air of the Rouge Velvet Bistro. 20 pairs of eyes immediately swiveled towards our table. The people at the next table froze mid-motion, their forks suspended in the air. The waiters stood petrified in the aisle. And me? I wasn't there anymore. A minute ago, I was still sitting at the corner of the table, my handbag neatly resting on my lap. I stood up, calmly picked up my bag, and walked away. Everyone thought I was heading to the restroom, but no. My feet did not turn down the hallway leading to the restroom door. I walked straight out the main entrance. The taxi I had called 10 minutes earlier was idling at the curb. Behind me, there was the loud scraping of chairs, and someone was rushing after me. Marcus's voice, my son, rang out in panic, "Mom, wait up!" But I was already inside the car door shut. The driver looked at me through the rearview mirror, his eyes surprised. "We can go now, driver," I said, my voice strangely composed. The car glided away. Through the window, I saw Marcus standing in the middle of the sidewalk, his hand still raised, his mouth agape. Beside him, Tiana was clutching the bill, her face crimson. The guests gathered at the door, pointing, gossiping. It was my daughter-in-law's 30th birthday. 20 guests, luxurious dishes, expensive wine, a total bill of $450. And I, Celeste Reed, 68 years old, had just abandoned them all there, without paying a single cent. I knew what they would think. A crazy mother, an irresponsible mother, a mother who humiliated her family in front of their friends. But at 2 o'clock that morning, when Marcus came to my house, turned the spare key he still kept, flipped on the light, and saw me sitting there, on the familiar armchair, next to 3 neatly packed suitcases, with a stack of organized papers on the table. The sound that burst from his throat was no longer anger. It was a scream of despair. Because that night, Celeste Reed, the gentle mother of 68 years, was no longer the person they once knew. That night, I became a completely different person. Someone who finally had the courage to say, "Enough is enough." But to understand why I came to that decision, why in the eyes of many, a mother could be so cruel, I need to tell the story from the beginning. Believe me, this was not an impulsive decision, nor a passing fit of rage, as Marcus had screamed at the restaurant manager that night. This was the result of many months, perhaps many years, of swallowing tears, pretending not to hurt, and convincing myself that being a mother meant sacrificing everything, even dignity. It all started 2 years ago. If you have ever had to choose between loving others and respecting yourself, don't look away. In the next part, I will tell you how a request for just this one time nearly swept my entire life away. One Sunday afternoon in March 2023, the phone rang. Marcus called, his voice light and cautious, the tone I had heard hundreds of times since he was a teenager, the voice of someone about to ask for something. "Mom, I need to ask you for a favor. It's a little urgent." My heart tightened slightly. "What is it, son? Are you okay? Is Tiana all right?" "No, everyone's fine. It's just that Tiana's car has unexpected expenses. Could you lend me $500? I'll pay it back next month immediately. I promise my pension is $800 a month, just enough to live on. But this is my only son. I couldn't bear to refuse." "Yes, dear. I'll transfer it tomorrow." He told me I was the best mom. And then he didn't pay it back. The following month, instead of bringing up the debt, Marcus called to talk about a picnic, a new movie. His voice was cheerful, as if no loan existed. I kept silent, telling myself he must have forgotten. Then the 3rd month. "Mom, the air conditioner broke and the technician quoted $300. It's too hot. Tiana can't stand it. Can you help me out?" A whisper echoed in my head. Remind him about the $500 first. But my mouth said, "Yes, dear." The month after that, for Tiana's birthday. Could you help me with $200 to buy Tiana a gift? I'll combine it all and pay you back later. I looked at the calendar with a red circle, my knee checkup appointment, and postponed it for the third time. That night, lying there looking at the ceiling, the numbers raced through my mind. 500, 300, 200, a total of $1,000 in 3 months. I told myself, family has to help each other. But deep down, another feeling emerged. Why did I feel like I was being drained? In the 5th month, Marcus and Tiana walked in, unannounced. "Mom, we brought Chinese food." A brief moment of warmth. I turned off the stove and cleared a space. They sat down, opened the boxes, served themselves, and asked me to get the bottle of wine they had left a few weeks prior. I poured 2 glasses. They didn't offer me one. The whole meal, they talked to each other about people I didn't know, places I wasn't invited to. I felt like a shadow in my own house. After eating, Marcus leaned back. "Mom, I want to discuss something important." That same voice again. "We're planning our wedding anniversary trip. There's an all-inclusive package to the Bahamas. It's wonderful. The problem is..." I sighed. "How much do you need?" $2,000. I know it's a lot, but it's our anniversary. People only get married once. Tiana, looked up for the first time, her eyes cold. "Don't you have any savings, Mom?" "I do," I replied, "but it's for emergencies." "What's more important than your son's happiness? Marcus works so hard, he deserves a break." That sentence cut very deeply. "Let me see." They left, taking the rest of the wine, leaving behind a messy pile of dishes. I sat looking at the cold dinner table and understood. The dinner they brought for Mom turned out to be the amount I had to pay with my very last savings. If you were in my position, what would you do? Say no, right then, or continue to sacrifice to keep the peace? My answer the night after dragged everything further than you can imagine. 2 days later, I transferred $2,000. 2 years of my savings vanished with a single touch. The Bahamas trip lasted 1 week. In those 7 days, Marcus sent me exactly 3 messages, one from the airport, 1 beach photo, and 1 sentence, "Coming home tomorrow." And I began to understand this was no longer help. This was an invisible fund, named Mom. The first text message arrived at 6 o'clock on Monday morning. I was still restless over the $2,000 that had just left my account. It was a photo of Marcus and Tiana at the airport, matching outfits, a rolling suitcase, beaming smiles. The caption read, "Boarding now, Mom." Not a single, "How are you, Mom?" or "Do you need anything?" Just an update, as if I were a transit station that needed to be informed of their schedule. I messaged back, "Have fun, dear. Be sure to rest. Love you." The message showed "seen" with no reply. Their 3rd day was also my 3rd day of quiet solitude. That morning, a dizzy spell hit me. The room spun. My heart pounded erratically. I reached for the phone, my hands shaking uncontrollably. I thought about calling Marcus, but the self-admonition popped up. He's on vacation. Don't disturb him. With $2,000, I had bought them a week of uninterrupted peace. I shuffled along the wall to the living room, collapsing onto the chair, breathing heavily. Should I call an ambulance? I thought about the hospital bill, my meager balance, and the prospect of having to ask my son to lend me money again. Number. I sat there for another 30 minutes. The dizziness slowly subsided, but the panic and the feeling of emptiness did not. If I had passed out here, no one would know. A knock came at the door. "Celeste, are you home?" Brenda Howard, my neighbor, was holding my newspaper from the night before. She looked at my face and said firmly, "Get your purse. I'm driving you to the doctor. I'm a retired nurse. I know the face of someone having blood pressure issues." I had no excuse to refuse. Blood pressure, $165 per $105. The doctor asked about stress, finances, family. I shook my head. I'm fine, while clutching my nearly empty wallet. The prescription cost $87. Take it regularly, monitor weekly. If you get dizzy again, call emergency services. On the way back, Brenda quietly asked, "Couldn't your son take you?" "He's away with his wife." She nodded, silent. But her silence said it all. Stopping at the door, Brenda hesitated. "I don't want to embarrass you, but if you need it, I can lend you the money for the medication." Tears welled up. A near stranger was willing to help. Meanwhile, my son, who had just received $2,000, hadn't made a single call. I lied. "Thank you." I'm fine, I wasn't fine. But accepting the money meant admitting the truth. I had given everything and been left alone. If you were lying in bed with a dizzy spell, who would you call first? The new neighbor or the child you financially supported? The answer is easy, until you are the one holding the phone. The second message arrived on the 5th day, a photo of turquoise water, white sand, a lounge chair, an umbrella. "Indescribably beautiful, Mom." I looked at the photo, at the tranquility paid for by the $87 for medication I hadn't yet dared to buy. I texted, "That's wonderful. Remember to wear sunscreen." This time there was no seen notification. That week was as long as a nightmare. I postponed the medication, ate sparsely, turned off the air conditioning to save money, and walked instead of taking the bus. Every night, I lay looking at the phone, waiting for a call. Nothing. The third and final message came on Sunday evening. "Flying back tomorrow. Love you, Mom." 4 words, 7 days, traded for $2,000. I didn't reply immediately. For the first time, I felt something shift inside. It wasn't loud, just a small crack in the wall called a mother's unconditional love. Through that crack, I saw the truth. I was no longer Mom in their story. I was an ATM. 2 weeks after they returned, not a single call from Marcus. I initiated the call. "You've been back for days. Why haven't you stopped by?" "Oh, Tiana and I are tired." "Maybe next week." The next week passed. No one came. I called again. There was noise in the background, laughter, music. "Mom, I'm out with friends." "I'll call you back." He didn't call. That night, I sat in the kitchen in front of the blood pressure medication box, which I finally accepted the loan from Brenda to buy. I thought about the $2,000, the 3 text messages, and the missed appointments to visit me. And I asked myself, seriously for the first time, when did I become someone whose value only existed if I had something left to give? The answer sent a shiver down my spine. From the moment I started saying yes to everything. 1 month after the Bahamas trip, Marcus called me at 11 p.m. on a Friday. I had just taken my blood pressure medication and was about to turn off the light to sleep. The phone ringing made my heart skip a beat. A mother's instinct always anticipates the worst. "Mom! Great news!" Marcus's voice was full of excitement, and in the background, Tiana was giggling. "We found a new apartment!" "It's bigger, nicer, and has a gym and a pool too." I tried to smile, although just hearing it made me realize that kind of apartment was anything but cheap. "That's wonderful, dear. The thing is, they require 2 months' deposit. We're short exactly 1 month's rent. Could you help us out with $2,000 again?" $2,000. The number was so familiar it made me want to laugh. "Marcus, last month I know, but opportunities like this are rare. Just help me this one last time. When I have more money later, I'll pay you back everything." In my head was the number $234, my account balance. The refrigerator was nearly empty. It was still 8 days until my pension payment. "Son, I truly don't have any money left. My savings are all gone to you. Then do you still have a credit card? You could get an advance on your pension, too. That statement stunned me. He wanted me, a 68-year-old woman, to go into debt to finance his luxury apartment. Son, don't ask me to do that. Marcus's voice changed instantly, disappointed, slightly aggressive. You live alone. What do you spend your money on that you can't even afford $2,000? I stayed silent. I didn't mention that I spent it on food, electricity, and blood pressure medication. I didn't mention that this house was where he and Tiana constantly stayed over, yet I never complained once. Let me think about it. But think fast, Mom. They won't hold the apartment for long. Not a single good night. Not a word of concern. Just a demand, a deadline, and a cold click as he hung up. Do you know what feeling hurts more than being injured? It's when you realize, when you stop giving, they stop seeing you. A week passed, no call. 2 weeks, still silence. For the first time, I understood. When I was no longer useful, I vanished from their world. In the 3rd week, Marcus called back. His voice was cheerful, as if he had never spoken those hurtful words. We're moving this weekend. My boss loaned me the money. Could you help me with a small thing, Mom? Before I could answer, he continued. Saturday at 8 a.m., could you go to the old apartment and meet the moving crew? Just keep an eye on them. Don't let them damage anything. Tiana and I have to be at the new place to arrange the furniture. You won't be there? No, Mom. You can do it for me, right? And he hung up before I could say yes or no. Saturday morning, I woke up at 5 a.m., taking 2 buses to Columbia Heights. The weather was bitingly cold, and my knees ached due to the dampness. I wrapped my scarf tight and stepped out of the house while it was still dark. The moving crew was already waiting. Are you Mrs. Reed? Your son sent the keys. I stood watching them carry out every familiar item. The sofa I used to sit on, the dining table I used to wipe down. My son's apartment slowly emptied, and I was just the silent supervisor. By 11 a.m., everything was cleared out. I texted Marcus. Everything is done, dear. 2 hours with no reply. I sat down on the cold floor, my knees aching so much I couldn't stand up. In my bag, I only had a bottle of water and a piece of bread. I waited and waited. At 1 p.m., the phone vibrated. A brief message. Okay. Leave the keys with the security guard. No thank you. No asking if I got home safe. Not even asking if I had eaten anything. I limped outside into the drizzle, without an umbrella. 2 buses back home. I was soaked, exhausted, and my knees were swollen. As I sat down on the sofa in that heartbreakingly silent house, I knew something inside me had broken. Not an explosion, not a scream, just a cold, clear, and brutally honest shattering. I understood that. I wasn't their mother. I was the unpaid housekeeper, the personal bank, the emergency resource, but not the person they loved. 2 weeks later, I received a text message from Tiana, not Marcus. Mom Celeste, my birthday is October 15th. Party at Rouge Velvet Bistro, 8 p.m. Please confirm your attendance. No greeting, no concern, just a notification. Rouge Velvet Bistro, the most expensive restaurant on the Georgetown waterfront. I messaged back, yes, dear. I will be there. And I was still naive enough to hope maybe this party would help me reconnect with my son. But then, I was wrong. Wrong in a way I never expected. 2 days after the invitation text, Tiana called, not Marcus. Have you bought my birthday gift, Mom? No greeting. No, how are you? Straight to the point. Not yet, Tiana. I plan to go shopping this weekend. Good. I have a wish list at Neiman Marcus. I'll send you the link. There are different price points, but the item I like most is around $200 to $300. $300 for a gift, for someone who has never called me Mom, with genuine respect. Tiana, I will... Take a look. Oh, and one more thing. Her voice was momentarily hesitant, but calculating. The party will have about 20 guests. We are, of course, paying for our portion, but it would be great if you, as the mother-in-law, contribute the drinks or dessert. What do you think? She didn't ask, can you? She assumed you should. Tiana, I'm a bit tight this month. Oh, Mom Celeste, this is my 30th birthday. You only turn 30 once. Can you make a little effort? Make a little effort, as if I hadn't tried my hardest all this time. All right, I'll see. I knew you would help. You're the best mother-in-law. She hung up. I sat in silence, the anger not exploding, just simmering, dangerously. The next day, I stepped into Neiman Marcus in Friendship Heights for the first time. Warm lighting, expensive fragrance, impeccably dressed staff. And I was wearing my old coat, worn-out shoes, and a faux leather bag with frayed corners. I felt like a mismatched piece. I asked the service counter to look up Tiana Miles's wish list. The employee printed the list. I looked down. Luxury bath towels, $180, scented candle, $85, crystal vase, $240, leather tote bag, $420, high heels, $650, silk sheet set, $380. The cheapest item was the towel set, $180, 4 cotton towels. Do you need assistance, ma'am? I need to think. I backed away to a corner and opened my banking app, $423. Today was the 7th. 8 more days until my pension check. If I bought the $180 towel set, I would have $243 left for food and to pay the electricity and water bills due on the 12th. I looked around. People shopped leisurely, not bothering to check the prices, and I was calculating whether, after the birthday gift, I would still have enough money for eggs and bread. But Marcus is my son. Tiana is my daughter-in-law. I couldn't show up empty-handed for her 30th birthday. I returned to the counter. I'll take the towel set. The employee wrapped the gift meticulously. Gold paper, black ribbon. A proper gift for the wealthy. A special gift, isn't it? For my daughter-in-law. Her birthday. I'm sure she'll appreciate it very much. I forced a smile. I knew Tiana would open the box, say, "Oh, thank you," and set it aside. The POS machine showed $191.70. My heart clenched as I entered my PIN. Transaction successful. I carried the gift box out to the bus stop. The autumn wind was cold, and the gift box suddenly felt 100 times heavier. This wasn't just a gift. This was nearly a month of my groceries, the medication I had to postpone, the price for trying to retain some meaning in my son's life. Back home, I placed the gift box on the kitchen counter. I opened the fridge, half a turnip, 2 eggs, a little leftover rice. I fried the rice, eating in silence, looking at the gleaming gift box under the light. I thought of Tiana in the apartment with a pool and gym, planning a party for 20 people, and Marcus, who let his wife say those things without stopping her. That evening, I didn't cry. I just sat and realized, this will be the last time. The last time I emptied my wallet to fill the void in their lives. The last time I put their needs above my own survival. The last time I played the role of the mother who always said yes. But how to stop? How to break the cycle? I didn't know yet. Not until the night of October 15th, when I sat at the corner table in the Rouge Velvet Bistro, invisible among 20 people, and Tiana screamed, "Where did Mom go? Who's going to pay for this meal?" At that moment, I knew exactly what I had to do. If a $180 gift can buy someone's smile, then what is a mother's silence worth? At the dinner table that night, I decided to let them figure out the cost for themselves. On October 15th, I spent the entire afternoon getting ready. I took a careful bath, washed my hair with the cheap shampoo I'd used for years. Standing in front of my wardrobe, I chose the least faded dress. the navy blue dress I had worn to a friend's child's wedding last year. The fabric was still good, but the collar was slightly stretched, and the seam along the side was beginning to fade. I applied light makeup, a thin layer of foundation to cover the dark circles from many sleepless nights, a little pale pink lipstick to make my face look fresher. I carefully combed my hair, letting it fall over my shoulders, trying to hide the increasingly noticeable strands of gray. Looking in the mirror, I saw a 68-year-old woman doing her absolute best to look presentable. Not to be beautiful, just so I wouldn't embarrass my son, just so I wouldn't be looked at with pity. I took the beautifully wrapped gift box, which was large and heavy. I called an Uber, a luxury I rarely used. But tonight, I couldn't take this box on the bus. $18 for the trip from Petworth to Georgetown waterfront. The car stopped in front of Rouge Velvet Bistro at 7:55 p.m. Through the window, I saw the sparkling crystal lights, the pristine white tablecloths, the wine glasses gleaming under the warm light. The waiters wore white shirts and black bow ties, moving rhythmically like clock hands. I walked in, holding the gift box close to my chest. "Good evening. Do you have a reservation?" The young hostess, with neatly tied blonde hair, offered a polite but distant smile. "I am here for Tiana Miles's birthday party." "Yes, please follow me." She led me past tables filled with laughter and the flashes of couples taking photos. We headed towards the back of the restaurant, where a long table for 20 people was set. And then I saw them. Marcus stood amidst a group of men, holding a glass of red wine, laughing loudly at some story. He wore a brand-new cream-white shirt, clearly luxury brand, and well-fitting navy trousers. He looked poised, confident, and happy. Tiana was at the other end of the table, among a group of beautiful women. She wore a tight red dress, cut out at the waist, showing off her slender figure. Her hair was styled in luxurious curls, her makeup perfect. Smoky eyes, bright red lips, jewelry shimmering like swan lights. She looked like a movie star. I stood next to the table, hugging the gift box, waiting for someone to acknowledge my arrival. 5 seconds, 10 seconds, 20 seconds. No one looked at me. Marcus continued to laugh with his friends. Tiana giggled with her group of girlfriends. Other guests were drinking cocktails, taking photos, chatting. I was completely invisible. Finally, Marcus turned around and saw me. No surprise, no joy, no rush to hug me, just a dismissive nod. "Oh, you're here, Mom. Go find an empty seat." "No, I'm glad you came, Mom." "No, let me introduce you to everyone." "No, you look lovely today." Just a curt sentence. Then he turned away, resuming his conversation and laughter. My cheeks burned. I looked for an empty spot at the very end of the table, far from Marcus, far from Tiana, sitting next to a young couple engrossed in their own conversation, treating me as if I didn't exist. I placed the gift box at my feet, folding my hands lightly on my lap. The waiter came. "Would you like something to drink?" I looked at the menu. Cocktails $16 to $22. Wine $14 to $18. Beer $9. "Just water, please." "Are you sure, ma'am?" "Our house wine. Water." "Thank you." I didn't dare spend another cent. I guessed what would happen at the end of the evening. The couple next to me continued their conversation, not glancing over. I sat there, surrounded by the laughter and chatter of 20 people, and I had never felt so alone. Appetizers were served: bacon-wrapped shrimp, mushroom bruschetta, smoked salmon. I took one piece, eating slowly. Around me were stories about travel, the Hamptons, luxury restaurants, stocks, startups. I had nothing to contribute. I only had $800 a month and an increasingly constricted life. The woman on the left talked about a spa trip in Napa Valley. The man on the right spoke of his new boat. And I, with my glass of water and piece of bruschetta, sat silently like air. The main course arrived. I chose the cheapest item, the $38 roast chicken. Others ordered $75 Wagyu steak, $68 lobster, $62 lamb chops. I ate deliberately, just to give my hands something to do. In the middle of the table, Marcus stood up, raising his glass. "I'd like to say a few words about my wonderful wife." Applause broke out. "Tiana, you are the light of my life. I love you more every day." They kissed. Everyone cheered. I clapped too, but my heart was heavy. Marcus didn't look at me once. He didn't mention me. I didn't exist in my son's speech. Dessert! A tower of profiteroles with chocolate sauce, then a 3-tier cake covered in gold. Tiana blew out the candles. Everyone cheered, flashes of cameras everywhere. Then came the time for opening gifts. One by one, luxurious gift boxes were brought out. French perfume, leather wallets, gold earrings, spa vouchers. Every gift was expensive. It was my turn. I bent down and lifted the big box from my feet. "Happy birthday, dear." Tiana opened the box, looked inside for exactly 2 seconds. "Oh, that's nice. Thank you," she set it aside, and turned to the next gift, my $180, a month's worth of my groceries, 2 seconds of appreciation. My throat burned, not with tears, but with anger, a cold, sober, sharp anger. The waiter brought the bill, placing it in a black leather folder in the middle of the table. No one touched it right away. Then Marcus picked it up and opened it. I saw his eyes widen. He whispered something to Tiana. She nodded. Then he looked at me. "Mom, can you step over here for a moment?" I stood up and walked to the end of the table. Marcus handed me the bill. $1,247.89. "Mom, look, the bill is a bit high. Tiana and I will put in $900. Can you cover the rest? About $350. Let's call it your contribution to Tiana's birthday, $350. Nearly half of my pension. 4 times my weekly food budget. Double this month's electricity bill." "Marcus, I didn't bring much cash." "Then use your credit card, Mom." His voice was strained. A few people started looking over. "Son, I can't." Tiana looked directly at me for the first time. Her eyes were sharp and cold. "Mom Celeste, today is my birthday. Do you really want to ruin my evening? Just because of money?" All eyes were on me. The entire table fell silent. The music in the restaurant seemed to fade. And in that moment, something in me broke. Not broken down, but broken free. Liberating. I smiled faintly. "Let me just go to the restroom for a minute." I picked up my handbag and walked away. There are moments no one teaches you how to handle. Your heart chooses for you. And that evening, my footsteps knew exactly what I needed to do, before I even dared to admit it. I walked with steady, calm steps, past the dining tables, past the waiters. A few curious glances followed me, an elderly woman clutching her handbag, walking quickly towards the restroom hallway. But I didn't turn there. I went straight, heading for the main exit, for the large glass door engraved with the Rouge Velvet Bistro logo in gold. Behind me, Marcus's voice rang out, "Where are you going, Mom?" "The restroom is that way." I didn't stop. I pushed the door open. The cold October night air hit my face. The wind from the Potomac River gusted through, tossing my hair. I inhaled deeply, the first breath in hours where I felt truly free to breathe. My hand had quietly pulled out my phone 10 minutes earlier, right when Marcus handed me the bill. I booked the taxi while he was still talking about my contribution. The yellow taxi was parked at the corner as arranged, its lights turning on as I approached. "Mrs. Reed, is that you?" "Yes, it is." I opened the door and got in. The click of the door shutting sounded definitive. "Where to?" I was about to give the address when a scream tore through the air behind us. "Mom, wait up!" Marcus dashed out, waving his arms, his face flushed. Tiana hurried after him, stumbling on her high heels. A group of guests gathered at the door, surprised, gossiping. Marcus was only about 10 meters from the car. "We can go now, driver," I told the taxi driver, my voice strangely composed. He looked at me through the rearview mirror, glanced at the approaching Marcus, then looked back at me. "Are you sure, ma'am?" "I am sure. Please drive." He hesitated for a moment, turned on the signal, and pulled away from the curb. Marcus managed to touch the side of the car, but we were already gliding away. Through the mirror, I saw my son standing motionless on the sidewalk, his hand still reaching out. Beside him, Tiana clutched the bill, her face crimson. The guests pointed and whispered. As for me, I turned my face forward. The car followed the Georgetown waterfront, the lights from the restaurants and bars casting golden streaks on the water. Pedestrians, couples holding hands, the sound of laughter and conversation. The city went on as if nothing had happened. "Where exactly are you going, ma'am?" the driver asked softly. 1247 Varnum Street, Petworth. "Yes, ma'am." We were silent. Perhaps he had witnessed enough life stories from his passengers to know when to keep quiet. I looked out the window. The streetlights receded behind us. In my heart, there was no regret, no panic, no voice urging me to turn back. There was only a strange clarity, as if an invisible burden had just lifted from my shoulders. The car stopped in front of the house at 9:47 p.m. I paid $22 and stepped out. The house was dark and cold. I unlocked the door and turned on the light. Everything was the same. The old sofa, the faded rug, the photos of Marcus hanging on the wall, Marcus at 5 with a gap-toothed smile, Marcus at 10 in his soccer uniform, Marcus graduating in his cap and gown. I stood in the living room looking at the pictures. The child in the photos had disappeared somewhere between 18 and 35. In front of me now was a man I no longer recognized. I didn't take off my coat, nor did I sit down. I went straight upstairs into the bedroom and opened the closet. 3 suitcases bought 10 years ago, when I still dreamed of traveling with Marcus, were on the top shelf. I pulled them down, placed them on the bed, and started packing. No drama, no tears, just quietly doing what needed to be done. Clothes, shoes, toiletries, medication. In the bottom drawer was a small blue box. Photos I hadn't had the patience to hang on the wall. Marcus, at 2 in his father's arms, at 7 grinning with a missing front tooth, at 12 hugging me after his first day of high school. I held each one, my hands trembling slightly. That was my Marcus, the child who loved me unconditionally, who needed me for affection, not for money. I put the pictures into a suitcase. I went down to the small home office, opening the safe behind the landscape painting. I spun the code, 07-15-88- Marcus's date of birth. The safe opened. Inside were the house deed, Marcus's birth certificate, my husband's death certificate, insurance papers, a will, and a thick envelope. Inside the envelope were $3,400, the amount I had quietly saved over 18 months, in $20 bills, in $10 bills, savings from simple meals, walking instead of taking the bus, turning off the air conditioner on hot nights. I knew there would come a day when I would need this money, not for Marcus, but to save myself. That day was today. I gathered everything into a cloth bag and carried it down to the living room. The clock read 10:45. I sat down on the brown leather armchair, a gift from my husband 25 years ago, the chair where I still read every evening, the chair Marcus used to climb up to sit with me when he was little. The 3 suitcases were stacked next to it, the pile of papers neatly placed on the table. I sat and waited. I knew they would come, after figuring out how to pay the bill, borrowing from friends, calling Tiana's parents, or swiping a high-interest credit card. They would come, angry, demanding an explanation. The phone vibrated. Marcus was calling. I didn't answer. It vibrated again. Still Marcus. I still didn't pick up. Texts flooded in. "Where are you, Mom? Why did you just walk out like that? Do you know how much you embarrassed us? Come back right now." I read every line. The more I read, the calmer and more certain I became. There was no question asking, "Are you okay, Mom?" No apology for putting me in that situation. Only anger, accusations, demands. I silenced the phone, placed it on the table, and continued to wait. Exactly 12:32 a.m. The sound of a car stopping outside. A door slammed, angry voices, quick footsteps on the walk. A key turned in the lock. Marcus still had the spare. The door burst open. "Where are you, Mom?" Marcus's shout echoed through the house. He rushed in, Tiana following. She no longer looked glamorous. Her hair was messy, her mascara smeared, her red dress wrinkled. Marcus started to bolt up the stairs. "Mom, answer me!" "Son." My voice came from the living room, low and calm. He turned back, flipped on the light, walked in, then stopped dead. I was sitting in the armchair with 3 suitcases beside me and a stack of papers in front of me. I looked at him, composed, a composure he had never seen in me. His mouth fell open, unable to utter a word. A few seconds stretched into a full minute. Then a scream burst out, not forming words, just the raw sound of despair. "What? What is all this?" He glanced at the suitcases, at the papers, and then at my settled face. Tiana walked in behind him, freezing at the sight. "What are you planning to do?" she asked. The silence pinned the room down. Finally, I spoke. "Son, I am leaving." Sometimes, to save a child, a mother will do anything. But to save herself, sometimes a mother just needs to stand up and walk away. "Leaving? Leaving where?" Marcus's voice cracked mid-sentence. He stepped closer, his eyes fixed on the 3 suitcases as if he couldn't believe they actually existed. "Far away," I replied, my voice composed. "Leaving here, to start over, to live the rest of my life, with dignity." "Dignity?" Marcus let out a laugh, a strained, sharp, and undisguisedly sarcastic laugh. "You talk about dignity? After you just humiliated us in front of 20 people? Tiana stepped up, her hands clenched so tight her knuckles were white. Mascara was smeared in black streaks on her cheeks, making her look both furious and exhausted. "Do you know what we had to do?" Tiana hissed. "We had to borrow money from Jessica, my best friend, just to pay the bill. We looked like beggars at a luxury party. All because of you." I looked directly into her eyes, without blinking. "Not because of me, Tiana. Because of you. Because you decided to host a party you couldn't afford. Because you assumed your mother-in-law would cover the deficit as an obligation. That's what mothers do." Tiana raised her voice. "Mothers help their children. That's family." "No," I cut her off, my voice cold as steel. "That's what you thought I should do." But family is not one-sided. Family is not me giving everything while you merely receive. Marcus ran a hand through his hair and started pacing, looking distraught. "Mom, you're overreacting," he said. "I know we've been leaning on you a bit. But it's not to the point where you have to stage this entire spectacle. You only had to talk to me." I looked at him, my eyes calm. "Did you listen?" Marcus froze. "What?" "When I said I had no money, did you listen? When I said I couldn't lend any more, did you respect that? Or did you guilt me until I was forced to give in?" Marcus opened his mouth, then closed it. There was no answer. I continued, my voice soft but firm. "I have loaned you over $10,000 in the past 2 years. You haven't paid back a single dime." "10,000?" Tiana repeated, her eyes widening. "He told me it was only a few thousand." Marcus shook his head frantically. "Mom is exaggerating." I began to count, my voice steady, as if reading a report. Last March, $500 for Tiana's car repair. April, $300 for the air conditioner repair. May, $200 for Tiana's birthday gift. June, $400 for a partner gift. July, $600 for the anniversary celebration. August, $800 for furniture. September, $2,000 for the Bahamas trip. October, $2,000 for the apartment deposit. Enough, Marcus yelled. I get it. It's a lot. But if you needed the money back, you just had to say so. You didn't have to go this far. I did say so. I didn't look away from him. But every time I mentioned it, you made me feel selfish. Every time I said I couldn't give, you made me feel like a burden. Tiana stepped closer, her voice dripping with sarcasm. If you felt that way, you should have talked to us like an adult. Not run out of a restaurant like a petulant child. For the first time in the conversation, I stood up. Tiana unconsciously took half a step back. Like an adult? I repeated, my voice low but sharp. Tiana, for 3 years, how have you treated me? You never called me with respect in your voice. You gave me orders. You demanded things from me, and you only called when you needed something. Tiana's mouth opened, but no words came out. I took another step forward, my voice still even. When was the last time you checked on me? When did you invite me somewhere without expecting me to pay? When did you make me feel that I had value? The room fell silent. Marcus spoke again. Mom, if you felt that way, you should have just told me. I did tell you! I didn't scream, but the word landed like a hammer blow on the floor. But you didn't listen. You dismissed it. You covered your ears every time I said you were crossing the line. Tiana crossed her arms, challenging me. So what do you want now? Do you want us to kneel down and apologize? Beg you to stay? I looked at both of them, my son and my daughter-in-law, and said, I don't expect anything anymore. I came here tonight only to say goodbye and to retrieve my house key. Marcus was stunned. The key? Yes, give it back to me. He hesitated, then pulled the key from his pocket, looking at it as if it were a lifelong, familiar object. Then he threw it hard onto the table. There, take it. I bent down, picked up the key, and put it in my bag. Marcus's voice trembled. Are you really selling the house? I nodded. 3 weeks ago. $350,000. Tiana snatched the papers, her eyes wide. $350,000? But this house belongs to Marcus. It's his inheritance. No. I looked at her intently. This house belongs to me. I bought it with my husband's life insurance money when Marcus was just 10 years old. It is my sweat, my tears, and my existence. And I decided to sell it to whom? Marcus asked, his voice colorless. Someone who will take possession on November 1st. You have 2 weeks to collect anything you still have left here. Marcus staggered and sat down. I can't believe you did this. I paid off all my medical debts, settled my bank accounts, kept a portion to live on. And I donated the rest. Donated? Marcus repeated, as if he couldn't believe his ears. $50,000 to a support center for elderly women, those who have been victims of domestic violence. Violence? Tiana shrieked. You're calling us abusers just because we asked you for money? Tiana, I said slowly, not violence with fists, but violence through manipulation, through exploitation, through abandoning my feelings while calling it family. Marcus jumped to his feet. So you see me as an abuser? Do you really think that? I looked at him, a deep, painful look. Marcus, since the day you married Tiana, how many times have you visited me without an agenda? How many times have you called me just to check in? What have you ever done for me without expecting something in return? Marcus looked down at the floor. He couldn't find an answer. Tiana crossed her arms, defiant. So what now? What do you want us to do? I simply said, I just wanted to say goodbye. And close this chapter. Marcus trembled. You'll be lonely. No one will take care of you. No one will stand by you. I replied gently, I prefer to be lonely and peaceful, rather than having company and suffering. And when the day comes that I can't care for myself, there are places that will treat me with kindness, without requiring me to trade my dignity. Marcus's face was red, his voice icy. You're selfish. You will regret this. You will need me. And I won't be there then. I smiled, softly but certainly. I know. And I accept that. The door slammed shut. The sound of the car engine starting, tires squealing on the pavement. Then everything fell into silence. I stood in the middle of the living room, letting out a long sigh. My whole body trembled slightly, not from fear, but from the adrenaline of the first time in many years. I defended myself. For the first time, I said no. And the sky did not fall. Sometimes, to save a child, a mother must sacrifice herself. But to save herself, a mother only needs to stand up and walk out the door. I couldn't sleep that night. Not because of worry or regret, but because of a strange excitement. The feeling of a prisoner whose gate has been unlocked after years of confinement. At 5 a.m, I was wide awake. I bathed, put on comfortable jeans and a sweater, and poured a final cup of coffee in this kitchen. I looked around. The walls I had painted 3 times, the wooden floor I had sanded when Marcus was 15, the living room window where I had waited up for him every night throughout his high school years. There was sadness, but it wasn't heavy. It felt like closing a good book, regretful it's over, but knowing it was time. At 6:30, the Uber arrived. The Middle Eastern driver, named Ahmad, smiled kindly and helped me load the 3 suitcases. "Going far, ma'am?" "Yes, to a new beginning." He nodded as if he understood. "I wish you the best of luck." We drove through Washington, D.C., still draped in the early morning mist. The government buildings were dark, the Capitol dome glittering under the lights. I looked at it all through the window, knowing that the next time I returned, if I did, I would be a passerby, no longer a resident. Union Station was busy, even at 7 o'clock. Commuters holding coffee, students wearing backpacks, families pulling along sleepy children. I bought a ticket to New Carrollton, $9. Waiting for the train, I turned on my phone, a barrage of messages from last night until this morning. Marcus, 1:34 a.m. You have to understand you are destroying our family. Marcus, 2:15 a.m. Tiana is right. You are bitter and hateful, Tiana, 3:02 a.m. I hope you're satisfied with ruining my perfect night. Marcus, 6:47 a.m. Mom, I need to talk. It's important I read every line, my heart flat. No anger, no guilt, just emptiness and freedom. Those words no longer held power over me. I turned off the phone and put it in my pocket. The train ride to New Carrollton took 20 minutes. I sat by the window, the suitcases on the rack, watching the suburbs recede. Houses, parking lots, stores, schools, the pieces of the life I was leaving behind. Getting off the train, I looked for the bus stop to Annapolis. With 40 minutes to wait, I bought a sandwich, sat on a bench, and ate slowly, observing the people passing by, a young mother struggling with 2 children demanding candy, an elderly man leaning on his cane reading a newspaper, a young couple kissing passionately. Everyone had their own life, and for the first time in a long time, I was returning to mine. At 9:15, the bus arrived. The ticket was $5. The female driver, a middle-aged black woman with long braids, helped me stow my luggage. Going to Annapolis, ma'am? Yes. Visiting someone? My cousin. I'll be staying with her for a while. That's nice. Annapolis is beautiful. You'll love it. I chose a window seat. The bus left the city, heading east. The scenery gradually changed. Concrete and highways gave way to open fields, patches of woods, and low houses with white fences. The sun rose higher, the early light transforming into a bright, glorious day. I texted Aisha, "I'm on the way. Should arrive around 10:30. Aisha replied instantly, "My love, I'll wait for you at the stop." Heart emoji. My heart warmed. Someone was waiting for me. Not because I could give them anything, but because they wanted to see me. Sometimes to escape a cold house, you first have to unlock the door within yourself. And when that door opens, all roads lead to a place called peace. The bus pulled into the Annapolis station at 10:28. The first thing I felt, the smell of the sea. The air tasted salty, faintly of fish, with the cry of gulls and flags fluttering in the wind. And there, right at the stop, stood Aisha Monroe, my cousin, but in my heart, my sister. Aisha was 5 years older than me, 73 but full of vitality, gray hair and 2 braids, round-rimmed glasses, a mustard-yellow sweater. "Celeste!" She opened her arms. I stepped into that embrace and heard something inside me melt, not break, but soften. The months of bracing myself, controlling, being resolute, suddenly unnecessary. I wept in Aisha's arms, holding nothing back, without shame. "You're home," she whispered. "You're safe now." We hugged for a long time. Passers-by looked, but no one bothered us. In Annapolis, it seemed everyone understood. Sometimes people just need to be held. Aisha's house was in Eastport, 3 blocks from City Dock. A pale blue 2-story wooden house with white window frames, a rocking chair on the front porch, and a backyard overlooking a small canal with boats moored. "It's not as big as your place in D.C., Aisha said as she opened the door, "but this is home." Inside, it was cozy, the furniture old but soft, books everywhere, hand-woven rugs, and the scent of freshly baked bread wafting from the kitchen. "Did you bake?" "Your favorite cinnamon rolls. They're still warm." Tears welled up again. It had been so long since someone had done something for me, not in exchange for anything, just because they knew I liked it. Aisha led me upstairs and opened a small door. "Your room. A single bed with crisp white sheets, an old wooden desk, and an armchair by the window overlooking the yard and the canal. It's not much," she said, "but it's yours." "For as long as you need, it's perfect," I replied, and it truly was. Not spacious, not luxurious, but it was mine. No one to take it. No demands, no conditions. That afternoon, we sat in the small kitchen. Aisha made tea, and I told her everything, from the first loans to the night at Rouge Velvet Bistro, from the cold text messages to the midnight confrontation. Aisha listened, without interrupting. When I finished, she took my hand. "You did the right thing." "Do you think so?" "Sometimes I worry I went too far. Maybe I should have tried to talk one more time." "Celeste, listen to me. You tried to talk many times. They didn't want to hear you. They wanted a provider, not a mother. You deserve respect and love, not to be drained." Her words settled the last of the doubt within me. "What if I miss Marcus in a few months? What if I want to go back?" "Then you go back, if that's what you want. But when you do, that decision will come from a place of strength, not desperation. For now, you need to heal. You need to remember who you are, outside of the role of Marcus's mother." That night, I slept in the new bed, in the new room, in a new city. No anxiety, no nightmares, no ringing phone demanding anything. Only the gentle lapping of the water outside, the distant chime of boat bells in the wind, and a profound sense of peace. For the first time in months, I slept straight through until morning, and when the sun streamed through the window, the first thing I thought was no longer, "What does Marcus need today?" but, "What do I want to do today?" The answer made me smile. Anything I wanted. 6 months passed faster than I expected. In the early days in Annapolis, I thought I would be tormented, wanting to take back my words, apologize, and return. But that didn't happen. Instead, I started living. The first week, Aisha took me along the waterfront. We walked from Eastport to City Dock, through small streets with colonial-style houses, past the early morning seafood market filled with the smell of fresh crab, and past coffee shops fragrant with freshly baked pastries. "This is your city now," Aisha said. "Get acquainted with it." And I did. The second week, Aisha brought me to the bookstore where she worked part-time. Harborside Books on Main Street, with tall wooden shelves reaching the ceiling and the peaceful scent of old paper. The owner was Patrice Langley, 70 years old, with naturally curly gray hair, reading glasses on a beaded chain, and sharp eyes that seemed to look right through you. "So this is the Celeste Aisha talks about," Patrice said, shaking my hand firmly. "Aisha says you have an eye for aesthetics and you're good at organizing. We need help during the summer tourist season. Are you interested?" I looked around. Sunlight slanted through the window, the coffee corner was warm. Customers quietly turned pages, peaceful like an invitation. "I would love to." "Good. $15 an hour, 4 days a week, starting next week." So I had a job, a real job. Not charity, not a favor, but because I had value to contribute. In the first few months, Marcus still texted. Not constantly, but regularly. November. "Mom, we need to talk. We can't just leave things like this December. It's almost the holidays. Aren't you coming home?" January. "Tiana says you overreacted." I think she's right. I didn't reply. I read, turned off the screen, and continued my day. By February, something shifted. "Mom, we're in financial trouble." Really stuck. "The bank is charging high interest on the party loan. We owe rent on the new apartment. If we don't fix this quickly, we'll lose the deposit too." I read it. There was no longer the urge to rescue, no lingering guilt. Just a clear realization. This is the consequence. When you live beyond your means and assume others will bear the cost, the day of reckoning will come sooner or later. I still didn't reply. In those months, I rediscovered who I was when I wasn't Marcus's mother. I was Celeste Reed. I loved detective novels, enjoyed early morning walks when the city was quiet, drank black coffee without sugar, and in the afternoon, sat in a rocking chair, reading in the late sun. At Harborside, I made friends, not just customers. There was Brenda Thompson, 75, widowed, sharply humorous, who said plainly, "The best thing about old age is you stop caring what others think. You do what you need to survive." There was Julianne Carter, 72, a former literature teacher, who also carried a story about ungrateful children. "The secret to happiness at this age," she advised, "is to stop expecting others to fill your gaps. Learn to be whole and build a chosen family instead of clinging to a biological family that only causes pain." We started a book club, 8 women, all over 60, each with scars. Every Thursday evening after closing, we met. We talked about books, and then about life, pain, loss, rebirth. One evening in March, with the rain tapping on the window and the candlelight flickering, it was my turn. For 35 years, I always felt I was not enough. I thought if I gave more, sacrificed more, loved more, my son would finally see me. The truth is, I was never lacking. He just refused to look. The women nodded. A few wiped away tears. Patrice spoke slowly. "The hardest lesson for a mother is, you cannot force anyone to appreciate you, not even your child. We can and must appreciate ourselves and then walk away from places that don't." That night, as I walked home across the wet sidewalk, something shifted in my chest. Not that the wound disappeared. It was too deep. But it was acceptance. It was peace. When we stop waiting for an apology to be at peace, we suddenly hear the sound of real peace from within. April brought a surprise. I was arranging books on a Saturday afternoon when the doorbell rang. I looked up and my heart stopped. Marcus. But he wasn't alone. He was holding a little girl, about 2 years old, with curly hair and eyes, exactly like my late husband's. We looked at each other across the silence of the bookstore. 1,000 unspoken sentences passed between us. Finally, Marcus walked up, slowly. "Hi, Mom." "Hi, son. This is Zoe," he said hoarsely. "Your granddaughter. She was born in January. A granddaughter. I had a granddaughter. And all the months Tiana was pregnant, I was pushed to the periphery. Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I thought you'd come back. I thought you were just temporarily angry." I looked at Zoe. She sucked her thumb, looking at me curiously. May I hold her? Marcus hesitated, then handed her to me. Zoe was light, warm, and smelled of baby powder. Hello, Zoe. I'm Grandma. Grandma, the little girl babbled, smiling. Something melted in me, but not the old kind of weakness. It was love with boundaries. Why are you here? When Zoe was born, when I held her for the first time, I understood what unconditional love is, and I realized I had abused your love in the worst possible way. Tears streamed down his cheeks, the first time I had seen him cry since he was 12. I'm sorry. I don't expect forgiveness. I just want you to know I finally understand. I hope when Zoe grows up, I will be the father you deserved to have when I was your son. I stood there, holding my granddaughter, looking at my son, a million emotions intertwined. Marcus, I appreciate the apology, but you need to understand, I am not the woman I was before. I will not trade my peace to wedge myself back into your life. I understand. If you want Zoe to know her grandmother, it must be on my terms. Respect, clear boundaries, no more assuming I will solve your problems or finance your life. Right. I agree. I just want Zoe to have what I had, a loving grandmother. Even though I was a terrible son, you were always an amazing mother. I see that now. We didn't go back to the way things were. I didn't return to D.C., and Marcus didn't suggest it. We took it slow. 1 call a week, photos of Zoe, 1 visit a month. They came to Annapolis. The first month, Marcus sent $200. I know it's not much, he said. I'll pay it back gradually. Keep that money for Zoe, I told him. But never teach her that family means exploiting those who love you. I promise. Now I sit on Aisha's porch on a May afternoon, a warm cup of tea in my hand, the distant sound of the waves. Looking back, I don't regret it, not for a second. Did I lose my son? In one sense, yes. The old relationship ended, but I found myself again. And perhaps that is the true legacy I leave behind, not just for Marcus, but for Zoe, a grandmother who knew how to love and also how to respect herself. That love is not self-destruction, that sometimes the most loving act is to step away from the thing that is slowly killing you. My phone vibrated. A photo of Zoe hugging a bouquet of flowers, grinning. Zoe asked when she'll see Grandma again. Are you free this weekend, Mom? Marcus texted. I smiled and replied, yes. This time, I'm cooking dinner at Aisha's house. No expectations, just family. For the first time in a long time, the word family didn't tighten my chest. It warmed my chest. Because ultimately, the best family isn't the one that takes everything from you, but the one that gives you the space to breathe. And that is my journey. A journey that began with pain, moved through sleepless nights, and the text messages that clenched my heart, and finally ended with something I thought I would never find again. Peace. I did not return to Washington, D.C. as a desperate mother clinging to every broken piece of love. I moved forward as a woman who learned the hardest lesson of her life, that sometimes letting go is not a loss, but the beginning of living. Zoe grows every day. Marcus is learning how to be a father, how to be a decent person, and how to start over. As for me, I found the simple thing I couldn't reach for 30 years, the feeling that I am worthy. If this story resonated with you, if you see a reflection of yourself somewhere in my pain, my perseverance, or my moment of awakening, then remember, you are not alone, and you are never too late to choose your life again. If you want to hear more real-life stories full of hurt, but also full of hope, like this one, please subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you don't miss any journey. Thank you for listening until the end. I'll see you in the next story.